Welcome to the Necronama.com, where we spent all of October 2020 looking at 31 episodes of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, and honestly going a little insane in the process. But that finally ended. And now these fuckers went and made another one, so here we are again. Today, we're looking at Treehouse 32 from October 10th, 2021. A whole year later, I'm still James Sabata.
And I'm still Don Guillory.
And unfortunately, I'm Thomas Brungart, and I'm still alive a year later, against all of my wishes.
Your wishes and my constant attempts to kill you. I feel like the biggest failure. So
this episode almost killed me. It brought back all the PTSD from watching 31 of these last year.
You know, okay, let's start with that really fast. I want to point out, last year I had a couple episodes where it was very obvious that I was angry at the world. And I watched this episode and I was in a good mood and I liked it. And I left liking this episode. And I woke up the next day and I was like, what the fuck was that piece of shit I watched yesterday? And so this episode's brought to you by THC gummies.
That was going to be my first question, was how many gummies did you have when you watched it?
So here we are, ready to talk about it. I know you guys loved it even more than I did.
Things when the talking trees part of the episode, did you look outside and you thought they were talking to you? Or did you talk back to the trees as they were talking on screen?
That's unimportant. That's not what we're here to discuss. Now then. So really, I know you guys both hated this episode, and I think that that's funny because I thought that I was gonna like the following day, like I was like, crap, now I don't like it, and these two are gonna love it. And then I get here today and I find out you both hated it. So this should be a fun episode. Sorry, everybody.
It's very rare that I get angry about an episode. Like you've gotten angry about a lot of films we've watched, a lot of episodes. Well, they could have done this, could have done this, could have done this, right? This one, I was like, this just fucking took up space on my DVR. Because when we did it last year and we had that stretch of about 4 or 5 years of episodes, right? Right smack dab in the middle of the 20s, where it's kind of like, oh man, they just need to, maybe they need to stop doing this. And they even make the joke in this episode about how Homer, he's like, I'm finally going to kill this, these horror stories or kill the treehouse stories. And I'm thinking like, well, they get it too, that there are people who are kind of not necessarily tired, but frustrated. There are some parts of these episodes that should be entire episodes themselves rather than pieces or acts as part of a larger episode.
My question to you guys, I was wondering if this episode was made in Texas because somebody clearly stopped it from being aborted.
I don't think it took them 6 weeks to make this episode, so I think it was fair game.
All right.
Well, hold on. Before we get into it, I just wanted to say that like the worst part for me about this episode, because I don't watch any of the new episodes of The Simpsons, and when I do watch The Simpsons, I watch the sweet years, like back in the 90s. I was so upset with Marge's voice. Marge sounds terrible. I don't know if that was jarring for you guys, and I understand Julie Kavner is aging, but Marge sounded like she was dying.
Yeah, I didn't even notice.
I don't know how many of the newer ones you watched, but there is a period where her voice gets a little bit more shriveled or a little bit more shrewd, and then it picks back up. So I'm not sure if you've seen like the ones from the last 10 years, because there's like this period where it does get like that, and then it comes back.
Nah, I really haven't. I don't even remember last year's Treehouse being this upsetting from just a voice acting point of view. But I don't want the whole episode to be super negative. There were things about the episode I enjoyed, but it wasn't ever at a point where I was super interested. I had to watch the episode twice because I kept kind of dozing off or just forgetting I was watching it as I was watching it because it just was so uninteresting at times.
Well, they started off with something that had a lot of potential, which was Barty, which was a parody of Bambi. they had a lot of potential with this one, with the whole, the fact that they are officially owned by Disney, right? And they're making fun of Disney. That. And they've made fun of Disney even before the merger, right? Or before the purchase. But the fact that they're going so hard with it now, where they're making fun of how the Disney formula of, hey, these things should really be fucking traumatizing for kids. We're gonna show you parents getting murdered, and we're gonna show you like animals just getting slaughtered. But it's a kids movie. Enjoy. It's. I love how they had the whole song. Well, I shouldn't say song and dance, but they had the whole musical number where they were making fun of Disney. And making you come to terms with what most Disney movies are, and it's a modern day Grimm's fairy tale, whether it's adaptations or original stuff, where it's not supposed to be the whole happily ever after thing. They make some things cute and fun, but if you look at it in one direction, it definitely looks like, these are kids' horror movies, which fits for them to put it as part of the Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah, I like the Bambi riff. I think what we're going to talk about a lot for a lot of these is conceptually there's a lot of potential, but for me it's like, what should they have done instead, right? And
right.
What I hated about this first, and I also hated that they marketed this as 5 segments, 5 different acts.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't. It was 3 as it always is, and then 2 shorts. But what I think
I would say 1 short, because you normally have the wraparound. So the first short just took that spot.
Yeah, and I really disliked the ending of that. The beginning with Homer and Lenny as Bucks. I thought, for me, it would have been better if Bart and Marge got shot by Mr. Burns, and either their bodies or the buckshot, like the gun wound, spelled 32 or something like that, and that's how it started, right? With just dead animals everywhere. But maybe that's just too dark. I didn't like it as much as I disliked the first sketch or the first act of this awful episode. It was a parody of Parasite, and I didn't like the movie Parasite either, so it stands to reason I wouldn't like this opening act.
Well, I'm going to say that I loved Parasite, and I hate this, so I don't think that they're exclusive at all.
You know what bothered me the most and took me out of it immediately? This episode is too self-referential. There's so many things that are just in it for the sake of it being in there. Like, in the opening scene of that Parasite one, there's just like a box of Mr. Sparkle. And as first of all, that's Japanese and Parasite is Korean. Right away, I'm annoyed as a half Korean who has a lifetime vendetta against the Japanese. But also, there's that you keep that in there. But also there's that itchy and scratchy episode that Bart is watching while he's like tutoring the girl who's Rainer Wolfcastle's daughter.
Yeah, the Snowpiercer parody.
Yeah, but it's called Doe Piercer, and that bothers me because that would mean that the phrase doe exists within that world as a well-known phrase, and the itchy and scratchy writers are aware of Homer's grunt. So much so, and they enjoy it so much that they're like, we're going to make a title of an itchy and scratchy episode after doe. Like, it's something that you know because you're a Simpsons fan. It's not not everybody in the entire show is saying doe. It's not common phrasing. It's not jargon within Springfield. It just bothered me.
That's pretty great, actually.
It's like later when you see like Gordie Howe on Tinder with Miss Krabappel, it's like, yeah, I get it. Like they did this before. Like, you don't need to keep being so goddamn self-referential. Who is that for? Like, is it for me to like re-engage me in the series? Because like, oh, they're doing something that I enjoyed when I was a child. Because it doesn't. It just annoys me.
Oh, look, nostalgia. No, this was a good episode.
That's how we get Thomas back.
We'll put in Gordie Howe.
Does anybody even know who that is anymore? Like, I mean, like people watching this, like, come on.
Exactly.
It's fucking weird. Like, my kids probably don't even know who Brett Favre is, and that's way closer. I'm just saying neither one's in the NBA anymore.
And the other problem I have is that like all the things they're doing are so on the nose. It's like you got Sideshow Mel being like, this is an allegory. It's like, yeah, we fucking get it. Like, you don't need to spell out everything you're doing. Like, if you're going to parody something and like riff on it, you don't need to keep talking about how you're doing it in the moment. Like, it's just so like lowest common denominator.
I guess one of the later parts of this episode where they kind of do that again with a couple of jokes that they kind of shouldn't have gone with. I understand them trying to push the envelope in certain areas, but then you also realize that you're not that irreverent show that has to push the envelope. You're not the one that has to be raunchy. You're not the one that has to come up with the new jokes or just a new way to shock your audience. It doesn't necessarily come off as lazy. It just comes off as not a good joke and not creative.
Here's one of the things I was thinking about a lot while watching this first one, the Parasite parody, was looking back at old tree houses and thinking, well, they've parodied a lot of movies. What did I like about the ones from the past that I don't like about this one? And when I think about the parodies, the one that pops up the most is, of course, The Shining. And what do I like about The Shining? They took The Shining, the same basic plot, and they made it funny. They took Parasite and they didn't make it funny. They just made it over the top, and they lost like the triumph of what the Simpsons used to do in Treehouse of Horror episodes. It didn't make sense. All of their choices were so strange when it could have been something completely different.
True, because they lost the triumph of the moment, the triumph of the will. But get it? Anyway.
Also, Parasite is such a dated reference now. Like it started, and I was like, "Oh, is this Squid Game?"
That was
that's how fast the world moves.
I said, "Is Squid Game going to be on the episode for next year?" Because that's what they seem to be trying. If they'd gone with The Ring, or whatever they called it, the Dead Ringer, or the parody that they do of The Ring, I get that because that film has reached a certain status and a certain level to where even if you haven't seen the movie, you know what happens. They didn't need to necessarily go with Parasite. I mean, I get it as far as there's something to do there. Kirk comes back and does the same thing that the woman does in Parasite, where she pushes the refrigerator away from the wall so she can get down to the basement to get to her husband. And this one, it's not just the Van Houtens, it's half the fucking town that's down there. But then when Lisa points out, hey, we can all get together and we can, I wrote it down. So, we can work together for class solidarity. And I think Mo mentions, he says, yeah, we can do that as long as it's not socialism. And she stops. And that was probably the most powerful piece of social commentary that this episode had, or at least it stood out for me, because that gets right into American politics, American discussions. If you ever get to this moment where it's, hey, here's some really good ideas, but if you get someone on the right to convince someone that it's socialism, whether it is or it's not, that immediately triggers all the anti-communist propaganda and bullshit that we had to go through, from the 1940s on until now, where anything that's mutual aid is immediately bad because of how it can lead to another system that the United States apparently is diametrically opposed to, as opposed to actually having some type of class struggle and class solidarity that'll lead to change that, requires things like work strikes or just say labor strikes themselves or a general strike. But I felt like they missed an opportunity to kind of, play around with that one as well, especially when they did the whole, it turns out you're parasites. You're parasites. We're all parasites. And then, Sideshow Mel's, this is all an allegory. We get it.
I don't know. I hate everything about it. Like, this only serves to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen it. And they could have easily done, like, I would love to see the same premise, but the whole thing is Homer in the house, right? And, like, the fridge keeps moving, and the fridge is, like, blocking the tunnel. And so he bolts it down or like seals it shut somehow so that the fridge doesn't leave him. And then we'd see the people in the basement like freaking out that they can't get out. Like that's hilarious to me. That would be way better. And instead we got, here's Parasite. Here's the twist to Parasite. And now we're not even going to finish our episode. We're going to have Bart watch TV.
Yeah.
But there's nothing else there. It was literally just like, we just want to show you the twist to Parasite. Like, what the fuck?
You may as well just parody something like Train to Busan and call it Train to Shelbyville or Train to Springfield, and because you could have You could have done the same number of things where, I don't know, it's the last donut on the train. You could go with some of the classic tropes of Homer, or, the idea that everybody else in his family is stuck on one side of the train. He has to fight his way through, all the people from Springfield who've turned into zombies. And I don't know. There are no donuts left. You could bring back one of those jokes that's been done in one of the previous Treehouse of Horror episodes of how much he loves donuts.
Which is the perfect segue, because the second part of this episode is just a rehash of other shit they've done in the past. So
no, it's not. This is completely original.
Uh-huh. It's a tree now.
Are we talking about the parody of The Happening?
If it had become a parody of The Happening, I would be happier than whatever the fuck we got. The only saving grace is that the tree didn't give me a 20-minute speech.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that the Stanford tree was in there.
I did laugh at that. My wife went to Stanford, so I always make fun of a tree. I'm sure it's a great place at Christmas.
And I hate Stanford, but I laughed at the tree. And I also laughed when it came back in Act 3, just roaming around in the back. Yeah, this one was just so... Also on the nose, Don, you were saying earlier, Homer makes that joke where like, oh, there's always two good ones and one lame one in the middle. And that's him referencing previous Treehouse of Horrors.
But that's not just a treehouse thing. That's writing. You're always going to put your strongest ones at the opening and at the end. And like if you read a short story collection, it always hits that way. And so your shit's always going to go in the middle. I mean, that's just writing. So yeah. I think Homer's wrong. I think Homer's wrong because he claims there's two good things around it.
And there's not. I like the joke where there was an elm tree or a Dutch tree and the tree was like, oh, everybody always blames the Dutch. But there are some questionable jokes in this act.
Were there? I don't remember. Which one?
Well, there's one very obvious one, but the one that I didn't like was when they showed Groot in the drive-in, and the tree is like, right. Oh, look at you laughing at a brain-damaged tree. It's just not a good joke. Just lazy. But do you think this episode was broadcasted live? It would be a terrible strain on the animator's wrists. That's just some old, fun Simpsons humor for those of you still listening. James, do you want to get into the other joke we were talking about earlier?
No, I don't. Don wanted to talk about it.
I'll get into it because there's that whole idea of trees versus humans, and then the plant. I forget the name of the plant from. Oh my God! Now I forgot the name of the play. Little Shop of Horrors. So there's that moment where the trees are walking through, and then you have that one basketball player. Was it Tree Rollins?
You're asking the wrong person.
So
I said that Brett Favre was in the NBA. So.
Well, there's.
I mean, it was a joke, but I still said it.
There's solidarity of trees that go beyond, the whole idea of, I guess separation of trees, where you have the Stanford tree or the Stanford redwood, whatever it is. I don't know. I just know it's a very creepy mascot. So. They're all walking together, and then they come up to Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors, Audrey 2. And Audrey 2 makes a comment about that she's with them. And they make this reference or make this comment about like, oh, well, you're not a tree, you're a plant. And it could be a creative joke if you're doing it the right way, right? Because I've seen trans activists who've spoken out against a lot of the jokes that come at their expense. And they even said, like, there are some good trans jokes out there. It's just an issue of doing them at the expense of someone. But this moment, you've got Audrey 2 talking to the talking to the trees. They point out that she's a plant. And she responds with, well, I'm a trans plant. And it strikes me, one, as a lazy joke. Then it also strikes me as that person who's trying to tell a joke. They tell you the joke, and then they make that face like, hey, you get it? The whole elbow into your ribs. And they start, laughing about whatever it is because they want to feel secure and knowing that you find it funny rather than they find themselves as being either an asshole or a shitty joke teller.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think it's bad timing for the whole episode, right? It should have just been postponed by playoff baseball, and we shouldn't have ever had to watch this.
Well, the downside of that is then it would be in my future. This whole thing has so much potential, like you said. Like, it's a great idea that this tree that's had to listen to these stories. Like, wouldn't it be great if that tree was like, here's what I learned from you guys? You know, like do something cool with it instead of whatever the fuck they did instead. I don't know.
Right.
I feel like if my mom was like, I can write horror books too, James. Like that's what I got from this episode. That feeling.
Well, the next sketch was the Telltale Bart.
Oh.
Right.
Oh, that's my favorite.
And I was going to say it was also my favorite, not so much because of like the writing. I enjoyed the animation. It reminded me of like old Edward Gorey books.
Nice.
And that's the only reason I liked it.
This leaked early, it was released early so that you could watch this part. And I thought that really ruined what they were going for, because they're trying to get you to buy that this is the third story. And it's not, right? And so I'm like, well, if you leak it before then, don't we know that's not the third story? Like, everything, including the marketing of this episode, is just so questionable.
Well, that's interesting. I think this episode, or any Treehouse of Horror, would probably be better for like the way media is consumed now, just to release each individual short as YouTube videos or whatever, just post them on Twitter.
I think that'd be great.
Kind of like what SNL does, where like not everybody watches SNL, but each individual sketch will show up on your timeline the next day, and you'll end up watching something. Like it would be better served to just kind of release it that way.
I think that's a great idea.
Or even what they do with Disney Plus, they have those shorts where it's maybe 4 minutes, possibly 5 minutes. They've done them for Star Wars. They've done them for. They've done some similar ones. I think they even have like a Halloween themed one that they have on there. But they're all fairly short and pretty well done. I mean, it's a standalone story, or it's a standalone parody of something, and it doesn't rely on, we've got to tell 3 stories within a regular timed episode or episode time in length, and have the wraparound and have these callbacks within the episode, or callbacks to other things that we've done throughout this series of Treehouse of Horror. So I think, that would almost be more beneficial for them to do them in the short form, as we do it on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, wherever, that we can get people to watch it and get interested somewhat. Because, like, my daughter loves The Simpsons. She loves she loves seeing the stuff that goes on the show, ask questions about it. We have some good conversations about history and about, The Simpsons in general, and even the jokes. But there's no way I could possibly sit her down and get her interested into watching all the Treehouse of Horrors from the standpoint of understanding the historical, the horror links that these episodes have throughout the history of horror. But if you had something where it was a Simpson Halloween short, it would work, because it would be timely, it would be current, it would be something that a younger audience would probably latch onto.
So I had a question I was going to ask you guys at the end, but I think it fits really well here. Should they keep doing Treehouse of Horror? Because I feel like, this is my reasoning for no. I feel like people who watch The Simpsons all the time are always the ones who tell me they don't like Treehouse of Horror. And people like me who only watch Treehouse of Horror aren't watching the rest. So going back to your know the audience, I'm voting no, but I wanted your guys' opinion on whether this should continue or not.
Well, we talked about this last year, but I was always of the camp of, I love The Simpsons, I don't like Treehouse of Horror. And last year was the first time I really appreciated Treehouse of Horror, because I was forced to watch it. And it had its moments where I was like, oh, it has the aspects of The Simpsons I love. The Simpsons has lacked the aspects of The Simpsons I love for years. I don't think, well, first of all, they already announced Treehouse of Horror 33 at the end of 32.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But my thing is, one, they shouldn't do Treehouse of Horror, but also they shouldn't do the show anymore either. Like, it should all be over. Is how I feel about it, because if you ask me what my favorite show is, I would still say it's The Simpsons, but I haven't watched The Simpsons in 20 years. So I don't think them adding more episodes to what they've already done benefits anybody.
Like how when I say Arrested Development is my favorite show of all time, I mean the 3 seasons of Arrested Development that exist.
Right. So when you say, like, oh, they're making new episodes and it's bringing a new audience in, you don't need new episodes for that. Just have them watch the first 800 fucking episodes. Like, there's plenty of back content. Like, you have Disney Plus. Go on Disney Plus and spend the next 5 years of your life catching up to season 33. Like, you don't need to do it anymore.
Oh, no. I don't mean
people aren't sitting around on Sunday.
I mean, as far as, right. And I mean, as far as you've got those shorts that you could just, I hate to make this comparison, but, you know, like when people were really into, I don't know if they were ever really into it, but let's just say Abbott and Costello, right? They did all these fucking movies that were about, you know, Abbott and Costello and the Wolfman and the Mummy and Frankenstein. And, you know, they did all these things where it wasn't even about them anymore. It was about them doing shit, or Ernest, right? Again, I hate making this comparison, but I think what you could have is if you just left it on Disney Plus, it was 2-minute shorts that might come out once a week, right? You leave it at that. We don't need to have any more stories with The Simpsons. You don't need to have any more episodes. Yeah, you've got a great catalog of episodes, or at least great, you know, size of catalog of episodes that you can go through, that you can watch, that you can get somebody into, just like you have with all these other TV shows, these older TV shows on streaming services, whether we're talking about Friends, The Office, Seinfeld, Arrested Development, where you have these shows that are there that can get a new audience because they just haven't been exposed to them. I think the best way to keep The Simpsons going, if you're not going to end it, is to just have it in a short form where it's, you know, it's on Disney Plus. And, you know, after 2-3 weeks, then for some reason that same episode, you know, comes out on Twitter, or kind of like what John Oliver does, where he has the TV show, but that night, whatever his big segment is, ends up on social media because they put it out. So you don't even have to pay for HBO to see his shit, because it's going to be online for free.
Yeah, I think that actually, like, if you're going to keep going, I do think that's a good way. But I agree with Thomas. I think we should kill the whole thing at this point. But it's obviously not our call. And I don't watch, so I'm just not going to be that person today, I guess. So yeah.
Do we have to talk about the last sketch, or can I just talk about the end? Can I just talk about the ending of No Time to Die?
No. Really fast. Shout out to Don for somehow managing to incorporate the Universal monsters into this to keep all of our October episodes tied in together. But
hey, Don, did this sketch bring back like a PTSD from when you got booted from TikTok?
I was waiting. I'm waiting. As soon as I saw that, I was like, Thomas is going to fucking say something about TikTok to me. Well, let's put it this way. Yeah, I did think about it. But I only thought about it in the sense that Thomas is going to say something about me getting kicked off of TikTok. I know it's going to happen. But apparently there's some dude who looks just like me and sounds like me who's on TikTok now. I don't know how the hell he got on there and was able to steal my identity, but apparently there's somebody who looks just like me and sounds like me.
Here's my issue, Don. I go on TikTok to look at hot teens, okay? And then there's a video of you yelling at me about Ronald Reagan, and I'm wondering what I did wrong.
Wrong. There are 9 videos of me yelling about Ronald Reagan, 12 about Nixon, 31 about the Daughters of the Confederacy.
You know what they say? It's just a TikTok account until it becomes a manifesto, and we're bridging on manifesto at this point.
Oh, Thomas. I think this was a very good thing for them to incorporate by updating the ring to where it's TikTok. It's not YouTube. It's not, Vine, any of these other outdated things that people would be looking at. You're latching onto the thing that's probably going to be popular for the next 3-4 years. Given its growth and given its pull throughout the world. The fact that TikTok is the source of this deadly video, I thought was remarkable because I was waiting for someone to adapt The Ring. You know, it's been, 20 years? I was waiting for somebody to adapt The Ring for a modern audience to where it's, who the fuck has a VHS player? You're not going to give somebody a DVD. It's going to have to be through social media. And the fact that it's a TikTok video that's going around killing people, great. That's a fun thing. It's a fun observation, a great way to update this for the audience that would be watching.
But that's such a low bar for them to like it. It being impressive that they chose TikTok over Vine. Like, it's something we would praise in like a student film, right? Like, oh, they were topical and they made it like it's The Simpsons. It shouldn't be so impressive that they did that.
This is the stronger part of the whole. I'm not giving them that much credit. I'm just saying it was a good way to go with it, as opposed to, you know, they happen to find the videotape somewhere like in the attic. You know, how they've typically found old shit before. They happen to be going through a box, you know, it's Christmas decorations, or they're putting away the Halloween decorations, and they are taking them out, and they happen to find a VHS tape, and it's like, oh, well, we don't have a VCR. And then they have to go look for a VCR to find out what's on the videotape. I think it was a quick way to get into the story, a quick way, and also a way to show that the reach that social media has and the effect that it can have. But I also love the fact that they go to Grandpa, which again, it becomes one of those running jokes about him living so long, but they get him to watch the TikTok, and one, he can't hear what the person is saying. When it is the whole thing about him dying in 7 days, is like, oh, that was longer than my doctor gave me. You know, it's those are some good things that they threw in there. Not great, but good things that they threw in by comparison. But even beyond that, Lisa's journey, or at least what I picked up from it, is it's not about solving the mystery. Now it's about befriending the monster that's coming to kill you. You know, and the demon, it gets so annoyed with her, she goes back in the fucking well.
Well, the thing that annoyed me about that is that this episode's so self-referential, and then the Valentine she gives her isn't the choo-choo choose you Valentine, which I thought would have, like, if you're going to do any fucking reference to any episode, just do that.
No kidding.
And like, and to your point about Grandpa Simpson, he was the only person who sounded like he was supposed to. He still sounded like Grandpa, and that was cool.
I enjoyed the onion on his belt.
Oh. Always an onion on his belt. It's, you know, when we do these episodes, I always take notes. And the only note I wrote for this sketch was Dawn -TikTok -LOL. That's all I wrote.
I don't have anything good to say about this, and I don't have anything left. So what do you guys have before we wrap this up and let our listeners go back to their lives if they're still here?
I thought Maggie was cute as Tinkerbell. And don't watch this. Go out, watch No Time to Die, so I can talk about it sometime in the future.
Sweet. Don, do you have any final thoughts?
I just wrote bleh at the end. It was. Here's the thing. By the end of the episode, and I feel bad saying this, but as the two of you brought up earlier about this whole idea of, is it time to end The Simpsons or just to end the Treehouse of Horror, or possibly both? At the end of this episode, you know, you always look for that moment where something became stale, or you're in a relationship, right? And you get to that point where you realize, what the fuck have I been doing? You know, staying in this relationship. There's no magic there. There's no fun. There's not this moment where you kind of like, I'm still looking at this person, you know, lovingly or happily, or I want to be with this person. And that's kind of how it is with The Simpsons. You still like it, but you're like, what the fuck happened? So enough about my first marriage. Anyway.
No, I feel that completely in my soul, because the thing that happened last year when we did all of them is we hit that lull where I hated life. And then at the end, the final episode, like, I felt like I was back in the good years, right? And I don't know what episode we talked about it on, but there was one where we talked about how the people that were watching back then grew up and they get to write it now. And I had hope that this thing that I love was back. And yeah, okay.
Well,
That's
one thing I wanted
that's
to
the
say
end of my story.
last year when we did this, and we did an episode before we did all 31 episodes, and it was just us talking about why we were doing it. And I had mentioned that it was kind of this trip down memory lane with an old friend, and you get to peek in and see how they're doing in life. And it's just nice knowing that, you know, The Simpsons is still around. And this year I feel the opposite, where I'm like, oh, is that person still alive? I thought they'd be dead by now, right? Like, I just want it to be over with.
Yeah. It's like that friend. You go back and they're still talking about high school. And you're like, dude, that was like, have you done anything since then? Like, what's going on with life, man? Like, that's how I felt. That same, like, holy shit, get me out of here. I hope it's not contagious.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, what we're saying is we'll be back next year for 33.
What an uplifting episode.
This concludes another episode of the Necronama.com with James Sabata, Don Guillory, and Thomas Sexbot Brungart.